or something else entirely. Elward was part of the Rankin County Goon Squad, a group of deputies who broke into a home, assaulted two black men, shot one of them in the mouth, and tried to cover it up. Federal charges, federal convictions, federal prison. Same sheriff's department, same deputies, and the medical examiner who helped them avoid accountability for the first death is the same one sitting on Nolan Wells' sealed autopsy right now. Was the name of the officers involved in that one. They have since been found criminally responsible for that death, which that medical examiner has labeled or did label. His body was found in the water off Horn Island on July 4th. It was found in the water after a July 4th boat party with friends. He was the only one who didn't come home. I want to be clear about something. We don't know what happened to Nolan Wells. We don't know if his death was accidental. We don't know if it wasn't. His friends say he chose to stay behind on the island to talk to a girl, and maybe that's true. Maybe it isn't. Witnesses reported heavy drinking on the island. Maybe he was intoxicated. It ended up in the water alone, 8 miles from shore on an uninhabited barrier island at night with no phone. That's a scenario that ends in tragedy. Oh, there's some questions. There's some questions in the Nolan Wells case. Here's a question that nobody in Mississippi's government seems interested in answering.
According to federal court records and reporting by outlets including the Associated Press and Mississippi Today, 6 Rankin County sheriff's deputies were federally convicted in 2023 and 2024 for a January 2023 home invasion in which 2 black men were tortured and 1 was shot in the mouth. One of the convicted deputies, identified in reporting as Hunter Elwood, had previously been present at an arrest that resulted in an in-custody death. The Damian Cameron case, which Mississippi Today reported, involved a contested cause of death ruling.
There's some questions. There's some questions in the Nolan Wells case. Here's a question that nobody in Mississippi's government seems interested in answering. If the person responsible for determining how a black man died documented injuries to his neck consistent with compression by the deputies who arrested him, and then ruled it undetermined, why does that person still have a job? 3 independent pathologists reviewed the same evidence and called it a homicide. It's not a gotcha. It's not inflammatory. It's a basic institutional question that any functioning system should ask, and Mississippi hasn't asked it, which tells you everything you need to know about the framework.
In forensic pathology, once an autopsy has been completed and internal organs removed, subsequent examiners working on the same body have access to only what remains. According to publicly available reporting on the Wells case, an independent autopsy was performed approximately 2 weeks after the state's examination, conducted by Dr. Roger Mitchell, the former chief medical examiner for Washington, D.C., and funded by Colin Kaepernick's Know Your Rights camp. Dr. Mitchell's findings, as reported by Mississippi Today and other outlets, came back undetermined pending investigation. He indicated he could not rule out non-accidental factors, but also could not access the airway or throat structures, which had been removed during the state's examination.
And also, I'm just hoping still that there's congruency between that medical examiner and the independent one. I'm hoping that there's congruence here, and I'm hoping with all the effort they're making to dig out everything from cell phones to GPS data to examining everything, that everything just keeps coming up to tragic accident and not something much worse and darker than that.
Credibility is going to be everything here. So I'm not saying that she got anything wrong. I don't believe she wasn't criminally found wrong with anything she did in the past either. It's just, here's what happened. And here's the case that she was involved with, and here's how it turned out with the Goon Squad. And it doesn't look good.
Dr. Stacey Turner has served as Mississippi's chief medical examiner. Her office performed the autopsy on Nolan Wells on July 7th, according to reporting, 1 day after his body was recovered. As of the time this podcast was recorded, her findings in the Wells case were not public, sealed as part of grand jury proceedings that, according to reporting, had not yet been formally scheduled. The question the host raises, whether an official with a publicly contested prior ruling should retain authority over a subsequent high-profile case, is a governance and accountability question, not a factual finding about this case.
Say medical examiner. There's a lot of questions in that case. A lot of evidence, actually, in that case that shows extreme improprieties, criminal behavior. The Goon Squad was the name of the officers involved in that one. They have since been found criminally responsible for that death, which that medical examiner has labeled or did label.
What is publicly established is that the Goon Squad deputies were federally convicted, and that Elwood, one of the deputies present at the Cameron arrest, was among those convicted. What remains publicly unresolved is whether the Cameron case itself was ever reopened, and whether any formal review of the medical examiner's office was conducted in its aftermath. Mississippi Today reporting has documented the Cameron family's attorney's efforts to challenge the undetermined ruling, but as of available public reporting, the case remains closed at the state level.
Wells autopsy results. That's the framework. Not one bad actor, a framework. The deputies who used tasers and knelt on a man until he stopped breathing, they're part of it. The medical examiner who documented the injuries and then wrote undetermined, she's part of it. A grand jury that took that ruling and closed the case, they're part of it. And the system that looked at all this afterward and changed nothing, that's the framework. Nobody reviewed Turner's office after the Cameron findings. Nobody convened an independent panel. Nobody asked whether there was patterns in how deaths involving black residents were being classified. Nobody did.
According to publicly available reporting, including coverage by Mississippi Today and local affiliates, Trey Reed's death was reported in late September 2025. Local authorities and the state medical examiner's office ruled the death self-inflicted. Reed's family publicly disputed that ruling, retained attorney Ben Crump, and commissioned an independent autopsy reportedly funded by Colin Kaepernick. As of publicly available reporting, the results of that independent autopsy have not been released.
Turner's office affirmed the ruling. No injuries inconsistent with the finding. Reed's family doesn't believe it. Their attorney demanded surveillance footage. The family says Reed had been home with him days before and showed no signs of distress. They hired Ben Crump, the same attorney who represented Damon Cameron's family. They commissioned an independent autopsy funded by Colin Kaepernick. Those results have not been made public. Here's where I want to be careful and honest. Turner's ruling in the Reed case has not been independently contradicted. No outside pathologist has publicly said she got it wrong. It's possible her office is right, but the family doesn't trust.
This is one of the most carefully worded passages in the episode, and it is worth noting precisely because it models what responsible commentary on an active case looks like. The host is not asserting a conclusion about Wells's death. He is arguing that a pattern of institutional conduct, documented through federal convictions, publicly contested forensic rulings, and the absence of any formal accountability review, has created a trust environment in which the official findings, whatever they are, will not be accepted by the Wells family or much of the public.
Same results. And look, I'm not here to say that anything happened to Nolan Wells that was criminal. We don't know. We don't know the answer to that question yet. It could have. Accidents happen. Just because you have a framework like this, a toxic framework like this in your state, does not eviscerate the possibility of accidents happening and unfortunate deaths occurring that are nothing to do with race or hate or murder. It can happen.
According to reporting by Mississippi Today, Locks, and other Mississippi outlets, Nolan Wells, 18, was reported missing after a July 4th gathering on Horn Island, Mississippi, near the Gulf Coast. His body was subsequently recovered. His friends told investigators, according to reporting, that he chose to remain behind on the island to speak with a young woman. Investigators reported, according to public statements, that there was alcohol consumption at the gathering. The cause of death is, as of available reporting, sealed inside grand jury proceedings. No cause of death has been made public.
He was the only one who didn't come home. I want to be clear about something. We don't know what happened to Nolan Wells. We don't know if his death was accidental. We don't know if it wasn't. His friends say he chose to stay behind on the island to talk to a girl, and maybe that's true. Maybe it isn't. Witnesses reported heavy drinking on the island. Maybe he was intoxicated. It ended up in the water alone, 8 miles from shore on an uninhabited barrier island at night with no phone. That's a scenario that ends in tragedy without anyone doing anything wrong. We don't have answers yet. And the reason we don't have answers...
This sequencing is a matter of forensic procedure, not accusation. In standard practice, the first pathologist to examine a body has access to evidence that degrades or is removed during examination. According to reporting on this case, the state's toxicology results were not provided to Dr. Mitchell during his examination. Neither the state's cause of death finding nor Mitchell's independent finding has been publicly released as of available reporting. The DA's office, according to reporting, has sealed all autopsy results pending a grand jury that has not been publicly scheduled. The Wells family's attorney, Ben Crump, has publicly called for transparency and release of results.
Mitchell couldn't rule out non-accidental factors, but he also couldn't examine the airway, the lungs, or the throat because the state had already removed it. The state's toxology was never shared with him. The attorney representing Nolan's family is Ben Crump, same attorney who represented Damon Cameron's family, same attorney representing Trey Reed's family. 3 cases connected to scrutiny of this medical examiner's office. Same civil rights attorney every time, same pattern every time, a family that doesn't trust the state's findings and goes out and commissions its own examination.
Ben Crump is a Florida-based civil rights attorney who has represented families in numerous nationally prominent cases. His involvement in a case is a public fact in each of the 3 cases named.
So here's the argument, and I want to make it as clearly as I can. I'm not accusing Dr. Stacey Turner of doing anything wrong in Nolan Wells' case. I don't know what her autopsy found. Nobody outside the DA's office does. It's entirely possible that her findings are scientifically flawless, that the toxology, the tissue analysis, and the cause of death determination are exactly what the evidence supports. And it won't matter. Because even a perfect autopsy from this office in this state, inside this framework, will not be believed. Not by the Wells family, not by Ben Crump, not by the public watching this case. And it's not the family's fault. That is the system's fault. The system...
The argument being made is structural, about the conditions under which official findings are or are not trusted. And it is an argument this narration can represent fairly because it is framed in exactly those terms by the speaker.
Come on, Mississippi. The framework is the problem. Not one medical examiner, not one sheriff, not one DA. The framework. A sheriff who calls it no foul play within an hour of recovering a body before the autopsy or the toxology exists. A DA who seals the results and won't set a date for the grand jury. A medical examiner whose most high-profile prior ruling was contradicted by 3 independent experts and who was never reviewed for it. A governor who responds to a grieving family's demand for transparency by accusing their attorney of stoking division.
The Mississippi governor's public comments about this case and about attorney Ben Crump have been reported by Mississippi Today and other outlets. The host's account of the sheriff's early public statement, characterizing the death as not involving foul play before forensic results were available, is consistent with reporting on public statements made by local law enforcement in the days following Nolan Wells' death. The DA's decision to convene a grand jury and seal results pending that process is a documented procedural choice, confirmed in reporting. Grand juries are a standard mechanism in criminal investigations, and prosecutors are not required to set or announce timelines publicly.
Come on, Mississippi. The framework is the problem. Not one medical examiner, not one sheriff, not one DA. The framework. A sheriff who calls it no foul play within an hour of recovering a body before the autopsy or the toxology exists. A DA who seals the results and won't set a date for the grand jury. A medical examiner whose most high-profile prior ruling was contradicted by 3 independent experts and who was never reviewed for it. A governor who responds to a grieving family's demand for transparency by accusing their
According to reporting by Mississippi Today and Ben Crump's public statements, Christine Wells Wansley retained independent legal counsel and initiated parallel evidentiary preservation efforts within days of her son's death. The subpoenas to technology companies seeking digital records, including Snapchat and other platform data, have been publicly confirmed. The host closes the episode by noting that 4 black families in Mississippi are conducting their own parallel investigations because, in his framing, the official framework has given them no reason to trust it.
That's not how trust works. That's not how institutions work. And every family that hires their own pathologist and retains their own attorney is telling you exactly that. Damian Cameron's mother hoped the autopsy would reveal what happened to her son. She got undetermined, while 3 independent experts said homicide. The Trey Reed's family learned more about their son's death from the news than from the people who found him. Christine Wells Wansley buried her 18-year-old son on July 20th.
Nolan Wells was 18 years old, a black football player at Southwest Mississippi Community College, when he died on or around July 4, 2025, according to reporting by Mississippi Today, Lux, and other regional outlets. He was among a group attending a boat party on Horn Island, an uninhabited barrier island approximately 8 miles off the Mississippi Gulf Coast. According to accounts reported from his friends and described by investigators, Wells remained behind on the island while others departed. His body was recovered from the water off Horn Island on July 6th, according to available reporting. He was the only person from the group who did not return. His mother, Christine Wells Wansley, buried her son on July 20th and, according to public statements and reporting, sent preservation of evidence letters to the Harrison County Sheriff's Office, the District Attorney's Office, the Coroner, and the State Medical Examiner's Office the same day. She subsequently retained civil rights attorney Ben Crump and initiated subpoenas to 5 technology companies seeking her son's digital records, including social media and messaging platform data. The state autopsy was performed by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office on July 7th, 1 day after body recovery, according to reporting. An independent autopsy commissioned by the family and reportedly funded by Colin Kaepernick's Know Your Rights camp was performed approximately 2 weeks later by Dr. Roger Mitchell, the former chief medical examiner for Washington, D.C. Dr. Mitchell's findings were reported as undetermined pending investigation. According to reporting and statements made publicly by the family's legal team, Mitchell could not access the intact airway, lungs, or throat structures which had been removed during the state's prior examination, and the state's toxicology results were not shared with him. The state's cause of death determination has not been publicly released. Those results are sealed pending grand jury proceedings that, as of available reporting at the time of this podcast, had not been publicly scheduled. No charges have been filed in connection with Nolan Wells' death. No individual has been identified publicly as a suspect by investigators. The investigation remains active and unresolved. The central institutional concern raised throughout this episode involves Mississippi Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Stacey Turner and a prior case in which her office's ruling was publicly contested. In 2021, Damian Cameron, a black man, died in the custody of Rankin County Sheriff's deputies. According to reporting by Mississippi Today and others, Dr. Turner's office ruled his death undetermined. According to the same reporting, 3 independent pathologists subsequently reviewed the same evidence and concluded that the death should be classified as a homicide, citing internal neck injuries the reports described as consistent with compressive force applied by deputies during the arrest. A grand jury, according to reporting, used the official undetermined ruling and closed the case. One of the deputies present at Cameron's arrest, identified in federal court records and reporting as Hunter Elwood, was never charged in connection with Cameron's death. He was, however, later federally convicted in connection with the Rankin County Goon Squad case, a separate and fully adjudicated matter in which 6 Rankin County Sheriff's deputies were convicted on federal charges stemming from a January 2023 home invasion during which 2 black men were tortured and 1 was shot in the mouth. Federal prosecutors secured convictions in 2023 and 2024, and the convicted deputies received federal prison sentences. These are matters of federal court record. What is important to state clearly? The classification dispute in the Cameron case, where 3 independent pathologists said homicide and the official ruling said undetermined, has never been formally resolved. The case remains closed at the state level. No independent review of Dr. Turner's office was publicly convened following the Cameron findings. Dr. Turner retained her position as chief medical examiner. These are documented facts, not disputed claims. Whether any of this constitutes misconduct by Dr. Turner specifically is not established by available public reporting, and it is not asserted in this narration. She has not been criminally charged in connection with any ruling. The question being documented here is institutional. When an official's prior ruling is publicly contested by 3 independent experts and the deputy that ruling benefited is later federally convicted of unrelated civil rights crimes, what review mechanisms, if any, does the state have, and were they used? The public record suggests they were not. In September 2025, Trey Reed, a 21-year-old black student at Delta State University in Cleveland, Mississippi, was found hanging from a tree on campus, according to regional reporting. Local authorities and the state medical examiner's office ruled his death self-inflicted. Reed's family disputed that finding, retained Ben Crump, and commissioned an independent autopsy reportedly funded by Colin Kaepernick. As of available public reporting, the results of that independent autopsy have not been released publicly. As the host notes in this episode, and as this narration preserves, the state's ruling in the Reed case has not been publicly contradicted by an outside pathologist. This is a factual distinction from the Cameron case, where 3 independent experts did publicly contest the official finding. The Reed family's skepticism of the official ruling is a documented fact. Whether that skepticism is supported by forensic evidence is, as of available reporting, unknown. Advocates have also publicly connected a 2022 death, 13-year-old Shannon Wilson, a black boy whose death was ruled accidental drowning, reportedly without an autopsy, to the broader pattern. The host in this episode explicitly flags that no publicly confirmed documentation links Dr. Turner's office directly to the Wilson case. That distinction is material and preserved here. The Wilson family has made public allegations that his body was mishandled, including claims it was embalmed without consent. These allegations are reported as family claims and have not been confirmed by independent reporting as of available records. Because grand jury proceedings are a recurring procedural element in this episode, some general context is warranted. A grand jury is a panel of citizens convened to determine whether probable cause exists to bring criminal charges. In Mississippi, as in most states, grand jury proceedings are conducted in secret. Witnesses testify, evidence is presented, and deliberations occur without public access. A district attorney presents evidence. No defense attorney participates. The grand jury returns either a true bill, indictment, or a no bill, declining to charge. Prosecutors are not required to publicly announce when a grand jury is convened, when it will meet, or what timeline applies. The secrecy of grand jury proceedings is a feature of the system, not an anomaly. It is designed to protect both the integrity of the investigation and the reputations of individuals who might be investigated but not charged. In active cases, it is standard practice for all related evidence, including autopsy results, to be sealed until the grand jury process concludes. This context does not resolve the credibility questions the Wells family and their attorney have raised. It does mean that the absence of a public timeline or public disclosure of results is legally standard, not inherently suspicious. As of available public reporting, the following key facts remain unknown: the official cause of death in Nolan Wells' case, the contents of the state's toxicology results, whether the state's and independent examiner's findings are consistent or divergent, the results of the technology company subpoenas, the timeline for grand jury proceedings, and whether any independent review of the medical examiner's office has been initiated. The case is active, unresolved, and under investigation.